and swing.
Well, I just happened to have the master tape of Heroes with me, and it was converted to high-end digital because we just can't keep running the tape anymore. The tape is very old. It will snap. The oxide will wear off, so it has been converted to digital, but with great fidelity. This is virtually having the tape here. It sounds so good. To my ears, it sounds the same as a tape. Every song on Hero starts out with a backing track, and by that time David had a great band working with him. He had George Murray on bass, Carlos Alomar on guitar, who was with him for 30 years, starting with Young Americans, and Dennis Davis on drums. So by this time David had been working with these musicians for quite a few years. He had gone on the road with them. So anyway, this is what I'm going to play you, the basic track, when we had Dennis Davis sitting on drums, Carlos is in the room with his guitar, George Murray on bass, and the piano player is David Bowie. And off in the corner, Brian Eno was playing with his briefcase synthesizer and making these beautiful spatial noises. And the track started out with those five musicians playing together. No vocal, because there was no melody. There was no form, there was no structure yet. We didn't even know what the song was called. So that's the way this song started out. Now, I'll begin with the drum track. Okay, and Aaron, would you run it, please? So, kick drum, snare drum, and you could hear in the background, you could even hear Carlos's guitar a bit, which I'll put on the overhead cymbal mics. And then we have the tom-tom tracks. These are the drums. Then we have George Murray on bass. Now he has a special effect on the bass, which is a flanger. Stop it a second. We did something, see, this is another thing that's unconventional, because even in those days people said don't put any effects onto tape because you can't take the effect off. That's exactly what Bowie and I did do. We always put the effect on the tape so we couldn't take it off. We didn't want to change it because we would start creating a vibe from minute one. We'd start creating a vibe that was unchangeable. So if this was the sound, if you can play it again, Aaron. That's it. We're going to build up Heroes on top of this. Now, the first cool sound, I guess, would be Brian Eno said, okay, let me have a few passes with this little synthesizer he carried around in a briefcase. So here we have mixed synths. Beautiful. It's in the mix. You don't never heard it this clear though. Okay, Aaron. And so another thing David added to this, in those days there were some primitive string synthesizers, and I believe this one, it was made by a company called ARP, and it's called a Solina string synthesizer. So David played this part. Now, we thought this was the bee's knees back in the day, but it's really cheesy, very cheesy sound. Okay, so I'll put that into the mix. Starting to sound like Heroes even more. We're getting closer and closer to what the song is called, and a week later, we still don't have lyrics, but we might be calling it Heroes. We invited Robert Fripp to come to the studio, and he comes and lays down 3 tracks. Okay, and I'll go through those with you now. So Aaron, please run. So we have this track. Here we go. Okay, now that, Aaron, Brian Eno can take things into his synthesizer and manipulate them. That's a treated guitar, and that's something that he and Fripp worked on for on previous albums. Robert Fripp laid down 3 tracks, not knowing the structure of the song yet, but he had this lovely idea and was playing with his feedback control by stepping on his measured distances between the note he was playing and where the speaker was. So you have Fripp moving back and forth, playing this part, and you have Eno going like this with the little synthesizer and doing this and all that. So let's just play that. Could you go to that part once more? It's no ordinary guitar sound, and I know you can't buy a pedal like that that'll sound like that. That's done by 2 very smart people. So what we did, we had it played over 3 tracks, and no one track was good enough. So it was my idea. So if you play it, Aaron, please. So we have this, we have this. See, he came in later there. Different sound. And we have this track, 3 tracks. Now they're all very pretty, but they were meaningless until I threw them up like this. 3, the 3 together. And I had to do some judicial mix balancing in the mix, you know. But we always had this constant Fripp thing going all over the place, like it was like a celestial Fripp sound. Okay. So that took about 2 hours, actually, you know, 2 hours of playing to do all that, because, again, we were working in the dark. Now, let's see, there was one other thing that David played. He had this instrument called a Chamberlin, which was a more advanced mellotron. So David is playing a Chamberlin as a brass section. Now, this is real funny, because you hit the button that says brass, and the Chamberlin and the mellotron were early samplers. You know, these really were real musicians, but the sound quality wasn't great. So if you can go up to the part where the brass comes in, Aaron. This is David. This is a brass track. The riff is definitely Stax Records from Alabama, you know, but it's not a very good brass sound. But it's in the mix. Okay, David's quite impatient in the studio. If we want a cowbell and there's no cowbell around there, we'll start hitting things. It's quicker to hit things and find a cowbell facsimile rather than phone up for one and wait an hour or 2 for a cowbell, because already the idea will be old. But we found the metal reel of a tape. It had no tape on it. So I went out in the studio and I held this plate up like that, and I took a drumstick or a fork, I can't remember, but that's definitely me playing the tape flange, because that's a Puerto Rican cowbell thing, and I come from New York and I know what a cowbell should sound like. And so later in the song the tambourine comes in and it sounds like this. I can't remember who played this. It's either David or myself. He's a good percussionist. These 2 elements are actually very important to the song, because they help move it. You know, otherwise could be a little uninteresting after 6 minutes. So these come in later in the song. They enter later. Okay. So now those are all the instruments. So briefly, if you just want to hear them all in, Aaron, just hit it. I want to mix it again. But anyway, I won't. So now David had to write some lyrics. And one day he did announce that he had the lyrics written for Heroes, but he needed to, write a few more verses and all that. And on that day, Antonia Mass, who sang on backing vocals on Beauty and the Beast on the Heroes album, she was in the studio. And David couldn't concentrate with us in the studio, so he said, "Would you two mind taking a walk?" And I go, no, okay. And really, it's not a great place to walk around that area of Berlin. It was, they had this vacant lot with a gypsy encampment behind it, and then the wall. We walked around the back of the studio where we could actually see the control room, and I guess we were visible too, because Antonia and I shared a little kiss by the wall, or close to it. So we go back to the studio, and David is smiling, and so is Coco. Coco Schwab was there. They're both smiling. They had kind of like a cat who ate the cream kind of smile on their face. And I said, what's up? And they said, well, we saw you. Saw me. He says, yeah, we saw you kissed by the wall. And it made it into the song. You're in the song. I went, wow. I wasn't expecting that.
Standing by the wall, and the guns shot above our heads, and we kissed as though nothing could fall.
Okay, so there's the immortal. I'm immortalized in a David Bowie song. So you'll notice that the sound is very, very echoey, very roomy, and that's when I set up this 3-microphone technique, where I wanted the room, but I didn't want it all the time. We only had one track left for the vocal. So I set up a mic in the middle of the room to capture how the sound travels that far, maybe 15, 20 feet. And then I set up a third mic in the rear of the room where it travels the whole length, probably 50 feet. And David was on this end of the room with a close mic in front of him. And I had this technique, we had this ability in those days to put an electronic gate on a audio signal. So I put an electronic gate on the middle microphone and the distant microphone, and set them to a specific threshold where if David sings loud enough, he'll open the microphone. If he sings quiet, the microphone won't open, and you'll just hear this sound in front of him. The reason I did that was I had one track left. I could have easily put these on 3 separate tracks, but I didn't have three separate tracks. So once we had it all set up, he went and sang it. He came in and listened to the effect. He loved it, and he went back and just totted up a few tracks. We didn't really take very long to record the vocal. So at the beginning of the song, you'll only hear one track, and if you'll solo that track at the verse 1, please.
I will be king.
See, there's no reverb on that.
And you will be queen.
Stop. And he could hear that in the headphones, and he's working it. So verse 4, if you go to verse 4, now he's working the middle mic and the end mic.
I will be king, and you will be queen.
Okay, take the solo off.
Nothing but time away. We can be heroes just for one day.
Okay, so if you're in a studio and it's got a great sound, a great exotic sound, you bring it home with you. I was always told to bring the studio home with me, back to London for mixing. And if it's standing right in front of you like that, you gotta take advantage of it. So that's how it was recorded. The next thing to do was backing vocals, and on that verse you notice there was no backing vocals. So Aaron, could you solo the lead voice and the 2 backing vocal voices? Sure. Okay. So I was sitting in the control room doing my engineering production bit, and David says, "Come on in and do backing vocals." And we had a great assistant engineer there, Edu Meyer. So he took over the controls while I sang the backing vocals with David. So you'll notice that there's a British accent and a Brooklyn accent on these backing vocals, and I'll leave it to your imagination who's who. So if you could play verse 5 again, please.
I can remember standing by the wall, and the guns shot above our heads, over our heads, and we kissed as though nothing could fall, and the ship.
Okay, so that's how it all evolved. That was the backing vocals were the very last thing we put on the track. Okay, that's how we did it.